Serious case of bullying at work led to the ultimate consequence for 19-year-old waitress Brodie Panlock. Her case prompted Victoria to change its law. It now criminalises bullying, so perpetrators can be jailed for serious incidents. It was a case which threw the spotlight onto workplace bullying across Australia. The issue, which raises its ugly head in every workplace sector, is the subject of a public inquiry by the House of Representatives Employment Committee. It's worried workplace bullying is costing the Australian economy between $6 and $36 billion a year.
And their productivity has gone right down. It affects morale in the workplace and motivation. Absenteeism goes up, turnover goes up, and it's very expensive to try to replace skilled people.
But worse than the impact on the economy is the devastating effect workplace bullying can have on the individual.
From sort of minor frustration and anxiety, but it can go through to all sorts of effects like sleeplessness is a common effect. People often have feelings of depression, and of course there's been evidence of people who have become so badly affected that they've taken their own lives.
Headaches and feeling depressed and lack of motivation through to attempted suicides, which a number of people reported, and even multiple attempts at suicide, which is very disturbing.
Often they'll be suffering from post-traumatic stress or depression, just having lost their job or being harassed seriously, sometimes assaulted in a physical way.
John McPhilbin operates a helpline for the Injured Workers Support Network of New South Wales. It's the only body of its kind in Australia, and among other things is gathering research into workplace bullying.
Our survey showed that 59% of seriously injured workers have contemplated suicide in the last 6 months. It's through bullying from the system. The number one complaint is their number one stress is not with their injury, right, but with how they're treated by their employers and insurers, the financial stress and everything else. Injury is secondary to everything else, which is insane.
John knows a thing or two about bullying. He fought a 9-year campaign for justice after being bullied at work himself. He worked for a security firm where part of his role was to raise and correct safety issues with the firm's operations. But senior managers didn't want to hear his concerns.
I became very uncomfortable when I was looking at the way things were done, that certain safety breaches were being put through by certain senior managers to cut costs and to win contracts and so on, as well as other business failures as well. But because my role was as an analyst, I felt I had this ethical obligation to speak up.
John says this is when the bullying began, by 2 senior managers.
When you isolate somebody and you deliberately undermine what they're trying to do and make them look incompetent, that's bullying. So it was very Machiavellian. You could say, it was like, and it goes on all the time, but it's just insidious. It's like you're feeling as if you know that you're being attacked, but there is very little you can do about it.
John thought he could tough it out, but after 2 years of sustained bullying, his health was so badly affected he left work on stress leave.
Depression. You sort of. You stop, because I wasn't eating properly, I wasn't sleeping properly, I wasn't thinking properly. I wasn't able, actually, in the end it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. I couldn't do my job properly.
Ill as he was, but with no other avenue open to him, John sought justice through the workers' compensation system.
Unfortunately, the compensation system is heavily run by insurance interests. There's a great interest in denying liability, and sometimes the rehabilitation process is not seriously undertaken. And so people get into that, unfortunately, that treadmill of, all right, you're on workers' comp, you're in some way tainted, and you get your redress through that minimal recompense, which has got a massive gap between what's received and your income you would be receiving. And if there's not proper rehabilitation back into the workplace, then you fall into the scrap heap and on you go.
This was precisely what happened to John. He was insulted when his claim was denied on Christmas Eve 2003 and felt bullied a second time by the system.
But when I eventually won my case, what I found even more insulting was the fact is, as soon as I won my case, the same insurer who denied my claim then contacted me and said, well, Mr. McPhilbin, we now need you to go ahead and find a job. We don't care how you do it, but if you don't comply with our demands, we'll cut you off. So that in itself was bullying again. It was like these people were really hostile and didn't give a damn.
Michael Harmer is not surprised John couldn't get justice. He's been practicing industrial law for over 30 years and describes Australia's current laws for dealing with workplace bullying as full of holes.
Totally inadequate. Every time you get a serious bullying case come through the door, you have to limbo dance or squeeze that case into a number of existing avenues of legal redress, none of which hit the nail of the head in terms of bullying. As an industrial lawyer, one has to find our legal system a little bit embarrassing because it does let down so many people and therefore you let down clients. So even if there was an avenue forward, our court system is so ungainly, so expensive, that corporates can play games and just make it difficult for the victim of bullying to get through to the other end anyway.
One of those high-profile cases saw Kirsty Fraser-Kirk sue David Jones for $35 million in a sexual harassment case. Michael Harmer says the headline figure was not to do with recompense for her, but with a punitive deterrent to big organisations who can afford litigation. He's recommended the same thing should apply to workplace bullying.
There has to be also a sting, so that if a business is prepared to turn a blind eye to bullying conduct, because the bully is making dollars for the business, there has to be an ability for a court, consistent with proper principle around punitive damages, to impose a penalty commensurate with the profit made.
Given the gaps in the present system, Mr Harmer wants a standalone law prohibiting bullying with meaningful penalties and timely access to a court or tribunal to enforce them. He also believes there should be a national anti-bullying accreditation system which businesses sign up to, with perhaps a tax incentive behind it.
That, look, I'm a top accredited employer in this country and so I can attract and retain people because I've been independently investigated by an authority and found to reach the top level of actual implementation.
There's no consequence. Right now there's no consequence often for managers, there's no consequence at all for organisations.
Michelle Groh's organisation runs workshops like these to help both employers and employees deal with difficult workplace situations like bullying. She sees around 10,000 cases a year relating to workplace bullying. Her research shows that for every 1 or 2 cases reported, there would be between 8 and 20 actual cases going unreported.
Of people who do report bullying, there's 2 numbers that really concern me. About 44% believe that the organisation does nothing to resolve the issue, and another 18% believe that the organisation makes the situation worse. Now, I'm not sure which one of those figures bothers me more.
At the inquiry's hearing in Western Australia, Unions WA told the committee that calls about workplace bullying have increased by 70% in 3 years. One problem is that bullying currently falls under health and safety regulations, but it's far from a routine safety risk to prevent and eliminate.
You know, the people that do actually make the call are the tip of the iceberg, because there'll be many that don't feel empowered enough to make that call or think that there's going to be any remedy available for them, which is, you know, sadly a little true, because it is a very difficult road to go down, and we struggle with grievance procedures that are ineffectual and drawn out, bullying policies that aren't enforced. You know, these issues often aren't taken seriously and acted upon promptly or well by the employers.
Representing employers at the hearing, WA's Chamber of Commerce and Industry told the committee that without a consistent national definition of bullying, employers struggle to delineate boundaries. After listening to many personal stories across Australia, Committee Chair Amanda Rishworth understands the community has high expectations for the inquiry.
I said I don't think there's a silver bullet to this issue, but I do think that we'll be able to put up some recommendations that will really be able to strengthen the support and strengthen, I guess, the ability for our community to deal with workplace bullying.
After a long struggle that nearly cost him his life and family, John McPhilbin finally got the help he needed. At a cost to WorkCover New South Wales of around $60,000, John completed his degree in applied social science earlier this year.
I've been very lucky, and I need to stress that I've been very lucky, that this isn't a normal occurrence. Workplace bullying is having such a detrimental effect on people that it's actually leading to suicide, and we have to take it seriously, because we have a lot of really productive people whose lives have been destroyed.